What confession have you never told anyone until now? Story 1. This just happened, and I'm home now, shaking. I feel so incredibly awful, guilty, and embarrassed. I haven't encountered many ambulances on the road, and I'm young, so I didn't know what to do except panic. For context, it was a busy intersection. In the lane I was in, one lane was for left turns only, mine went straight, and the lane next to me went right but could also go straight. These lanes were at the bottom of a slope. The ambulance was speeding down the hill, heading into my lane and honking aggressively. Non-stop loud honking. The left turn lane was empty, but I wasn't sure if the ambulance was going to turn since it was in my lane, and it seemed too early for it to be merging into the turn lane. I panicked. My light was red, but I ran it, passed the car in the right-hand lane, and stopped at the side of the turn road. I felt absolutely horrible because I could have caused a major accident. Looking back, I probably should have just stayed in place, and the ambulance could have used the left turn lane to maneuver around. My dad is making me feel even worse, even though I already feel terrible. I know I'll probably have to pay some kind of fine, and of course I will. I just can't stop feeling guilty, embarrassed, and overwhelmed. I feel awful because I could have seriously hurt someone. Story 2. Okay, I'm 14 now, and this all started around last March when I was 12. When March came, I began to feel different. I started getting violent urges. I had 4 guinea pigs, and I acted on those urges by harming one of them. I genuinely felt pleasure from it. I beat and choked him, and every time I promised myself I wouldn't do it again, but I did. I continued hurting him for about 6 months until he died from a seizure. I cried a lot when he died. I was only 13 at the time. By September, I started hurting another guinea pig. This one was younger, so it died faster, also from a seizure. I cried less this time, just a small sob. Then I returned to normal. By this point, I told myself I was a monster. I no longer felt remorse. There were 2 guinea pigs left, and one of them gave birth. Instead of caring for them, I used a knife to end their lives. Afterward, I went outside to an alley and dissected one, then threw it down a nearby slope. This happened in December. I later began to hurt another guinea pig, and something inside me changed. It started to give me a disturbing sense of satisfaction. Eventually, this one also had a seizure. I watched it die, and I didn't panic. I just sat there blankly. I kept the body for 2 days before telling my mom it had died. When I told her, I pretended to cry and acted like I was distressed. I staged the whole thing. I became good at lying. After that 5th death, I told myself I needed a break. That break has lasted from February until now. During these 4 months, I've worked on my appearance and social skills. I now feel more accepted, and I even have a girlfriend. I enjoy this new life. It's peaceful and fun. Even though I don't truly connect with anyone, I maintain it to appear normal. But recently, those urges have returned. Rodents aren't enough anymore. I haven't committed a serious crime yet, but for the past month, I've had thoughts about harming dogs. I don't want to act on it. I like the life I have now. I wonder if this is all a sign of something deeper. My dad was abusive to me and my mom until I was 8. Could that be the reason for these urges? Story 3. I don't think I have much time, so I'll keep this brief. Some background. I recently found out I was adopted, sort of. My mom became pregnant by another man in the early years of her marriage. My dad, thinking I was his first child, was overjoyed. But when it came to light that he couldn't biologically have children, he became depressed. I wasn't his. Fast forward a few years. I have 4 brothers and 1 adopted sister. When my dad passed away, his will was read, and to everyone's shock, he left everything to me. It's been a few years and I haven't touched anything, but now my mom is taking me to court to try and force me to give the assets to my brothers. My sister isn't even considered in this scenario, but the will clearly states that if something happens to me, my mom inherits everything. She doesn't know I'm aware, but she's been mismanaging money for years. I just don't know how exactly. As I prepare for court, I found out she's willing to do anything if things don't go her way. I'm honestly scared. I don't know what anything means. She might do something before the hearing. I'm even suspicious of my wife. She's been pressuring me to spend on luxury items and trips we normally couldn't afford, though we technically could with the inheritance. I feel terrible because, in the end, he wasn't even my biological father. I just needed a place to say this. I think I'll speak with a lawyer tomorrow and have him help me withdraw some cash. I don't trust electronic communication or banks right now. I just want to get myself and my twins somewhere safe. I might suggest my wife stay with her dad until I know who I can truly trust. I discovered all this while digging into something I probably shouldn't have. Story 4. I was infatuated with them. They weren't. We were part of a larger friend group that I had become attached to through my own friends. At first, things were going fine, but I had unresolved issues. At 13, I started using certain adult apps and developed an unhealthy addiction that shaped my teenage years and made me emotionally unstable. I chose to engage in things that affected my perception and made me feel alienated. Eventually, I had a consensual encounter with this person I liked. For once, it felt like a normal experience rather than something harmful to my psyche. After the second time, they sent me a message saying they didn't want to do it again. I asked for one more time, and they agreed. Weeks later, I was set to sleep over at their place. The night before, one of our mutual friends spoke to me seriously, expressing that this person was starting to feel uncomfortable. I didn't really listen at the time, but their words still echo in my mind. That night, we got extremely high watching a movie. I asked to be intimate. They agreed, but stopped shortly after and said they didn't want to continue. I respected that, rolled over, and distracted myself. My usual way of initiating was awkward, sometimes a leg tap or a joke, but I didn't understand how to communicate it properly. I was shy, and this was my first time being with someone assigned female at birth. The next morning, I saw them crying at the edge of the bed. When I asked why, they said it was nothing. I got up, drank some juice, and left. I even invited them out the next day with no intentions beyond spending time together. 2 days later, everything fell apart. My entire friend group turned against me with messages, blocking, and even showing up at my house to confront me. A lot of the backlash came after I told their soon-to-be partner that they had slept around, which wasn't true. I said it out of jealousy, and I regret it every day. I lost everyone. They never slandered me publicly, but the silence was worse. Everyone moved on. I did too, but those memories linger. I cried for days, not just from shame, but because I didn't understand the depth of what I had done. I had betrayed someone I cared about. I used them as a way to feed an addiction, and I can't forgive myself for that. I've changed since then. I started college, met someone who helped me become a better person, and I now try to be kind to everyone. I've made it my mission to be helpful, thoughtful, and accountable. Saying sorry won't undo the damage. Even if I've grown, the guilt will always remind me of who I don't want to be again. All I can do now is move forward, spread kindness, and live in a way that makes up for my past, even if just a little. Story 5. I've always kind of had a thing for older women, which is fairly common, obviously. But last year, when I was 18, I was on a streaming app that has a section showing streamers in your area. I saw this one streamer who I found incredibly attractive. She was 26, which honestly made her even more attractive to me. I ended up telling her I was 24. She made a joke about how she was robbing the cradle with just a 2-year age difference, so she obviously would have been horrified if she knew it was actually an 8-year difference. I began flirting with her, and we continued messaging. This led to us going on a walk through the woods and having a lunch date. We eventually ended up back at her place, and we were intimate. I think about this from time to time, and the worst part is that this is probably one of the worst things I've ever done, but for some reason, I don't feel that bad about it. I feel no guilt or remorse when I think about it. Honestly, I only feel bad that I don't feel bad, not even about the part where I was dishonest. Story 6. 2 weeks ago, I got incredibly angry at my company for reasons that aren't so relevant for this post. In a moment of petty revenge, I locked one of the bathroom stalls from the outside. These stalls use indicator latches to lock, unlock, and have a white-red sign on the outside to show if they're occupied. Normally, these can only be locked from the inside, but if the little latch is balanced vertically before closing the door, it's possible to tip it over by sliding the indicator a bit, locking it from the outside. That's exactly what I did. Anyway, I figured someone would have noticed by now, since the restroom is used frequently, but it remained locked for an entire week without anyone fixing it. There are 3 other stalls, so no one was really inconvenienced or harmed. My only regret is that I locked the first stall in the row instead of the one next to it, because that way I could have used the one I prefer, knowing no one would be sitting right next to me. I could unlock it from the outside the same way I locked it, but right now I'm more curious to see when the company will finally do something about it. Story 7. As you can probably guess from the title, I found a gap in procedures and took full advantage of it. I wouldn't call it a loophole, just a gap combined with the apathy of others. Around 2005, I worked for a company that sold a bit of everything, both in-store and online. I did shifts at the main distribution center handling returns, but mostly worked in-store as a shift manager. Part of my role was dealing with returns, including items bought online. A big policy at the time was that any item under 10 pounds that had been opened was written off as waste and thrown away. If it was an online purchase, it didn't even require a receipt, just a manager's confirmation, mine, that it was one of our products. Back then, returns couldn't be done online, only in store. The bonus? Refunds for online purchases could be processed back to the original card or given in cash. So, guess what I started doing? I began processing fake returns for items that never existed. I also knew that the returned items marked as waste were sent to the distribution center and binned without being counted. Minimum wage, minimum effort. So stock numbers were always a bit off. I only ever did small items, around 30 pounds a day, but I did it for 3 years and ended up with about 17 to 18,000 pounds in cash. I used it for everyday purchases and occasionally put bits into a savings account. I eventually left the job and was able to put a deposit down on a house, which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Do I feel guilty? Would I do it again? No, but only because I don't think I could get away with it today. Do I feel bad for companies that deal with employee theft? Honestly, no. I think they create the very conditions that allow it to happen. From what I've seen, theft happens because employees are underpaid or treated poorly. When companies react to internal theft, their first move is always to clamp down on security instead of asking, why are employees doing this? What can we do to make them not want to steal? How about raising wages, improving working conditions, training managers better, offering profit sharing so employees feel invested? Whenever I hear about a company struggling with employee theft, I assume it must be a terrible place to work, and I feel zero sympathy. Story 8. When I was about 22, I attended a conference at a hotel. My stay at the hotel was covered by my college, but I drove myself there. On the night I had to check out, there was a massive storm. I was terrified to drive home in it, but I was broke and couldn't afford to pay for a room on my own. I was trying to work something out at the front desk and started crying. A guy from my college, who I barely knew, saw me crying and said he was staying another night. He told me I could stay with him, as long as I was comfortable sharing a bed. His room only had one. Of course, I was nervous about sharing a bed with a guy I barely knew. On top of that, I was dating someone at the time, a jealous, controlling, and emotionally immature person. He would have been furious if he found out, but I was desperate, so I agreed. Looking back, I realize how lucky I was. The guy was completely respectful. He never tried to make a move on me or do anything that made me uncomfortable the entire night. And my boyfriend at the time, thankfully now my ex, never found out about it. I've never told anyone about this before, and I still don't think I did anything wrong. I wasn't trying to cheat or lead someone on. I was just in a really difficult spot and needed a place to sleep. Story 9. I've been a house sitter and dog watcher for several years now. It's honestly easy money. I'm great at what I do. Chances are, when you return from your vacation or work trip, your place will be cleaner than when you left. I'll collect your mail and organize it by delivery date, wash all the towels and bed sheets I used, never invite guests over, everything you'd expect. But here's something you don't know. None of the homeowners know. I always go through your clothes. That's it, just your clothes. I open and inspect every closet, every drawer, dresses, suits, bathing suits, sweaters, pants, skirts, scarves, jackets, hats, hosiery. You name it. I've looked at it. And if something really stands out to me or gets my heart racing, I'll try it on. I'll stand in front of your mirror, see how it fits, maybe walk around the house in it for a bit. Especially if you're a married woman, for some reason, your clothes in particular always draw my attention. Yes, there's a thrill in doing something I know I'm not supposed to. There's also a strange excitement in the idea of being caught wearing something that wasn't mine. But more than anything, I just want to see what makes the item special. If you thought it was worth buying and wearing, I want to understand why. When I'm done, I fold it or hang it exactly how I found it. You never noticed. How do I know? Because you've asked me to house sit again and again. It all started back in high school. At parties, when everyone was outside, I'd sneak upstairs and see what someone's mom had tucked away. I'd try it on, check myself in the mirror, then carefully put it back like nothing ever happened. When I started house sitting, I realized I had full access and didn't need to sneak around anymore. I know it sounds incredibly invasive and like a huge breach of trust. I'm not asking for advice. I just needed to get it off my chest. Looking back, it does feel wrong, and I do regret it now. Story 10. My pants ripped while I was at work, and everything came out. I work as a courier between businesses, and I was at a shipping dock picking up some heavy boxes. As I squatted to lift one, my pants ripped at the back seam, and everything was suddenly exposed at the peak of the squat. This wouldn't have been such a problem if I hadn't just run out of clean undergarments due to a laundry mistake. It happened instantly. The loud, fast rip, the sudden drop, and the rush of cool air hitting me, it was unforgettable. I immediately stood up to try and hide the situation and looked around, but luckily no one seemed to be there. Still, I was mortified. I tied my hoodie around my waist and eventually made my way to a store to pick up a fresh pair of pants. But I'll always dread the thought that maybe someone did see me and was just too shocked or embarrassed themselves to say anything about this accidental wardrobe disaster. Story 11. I should have known I'd end up here. What started as a way to sleep a little easier turned into something that completely took over my life. I began taking over-the-counter medication to help me fall asleep. But over time, it became less about sleep and more about how it made everything feel distant, like I could shut off my mind. I've written about it before, and at the time I told myself I had control, that I could stop whenever I wanted, but that wasn't true. I've now been hospitalized. My body couldn't keep up with what I was doing. I was hallucinating, disoriented, and felt like a shell of myself, hearing voices, seeing disturbing figures, and feeling trapped inside my own mind. The doctors told me I was lucky to have made it there. That word, lucky, felt strange while I was strapped to a hospital bed, wondering what I had done to myself. Even now, after all of it, there's a part of me that still wants to return to it, and that terrifies me. I feel like I've changed something inside my brain, and now I can't find my way back to what used to be normal. I don't even remember what normal feels like. I have no one to talk to. Maybe I'm just saying this to get it off my chest. Maybe because I feel like I'm yelling into a void, hoping someone hears me. I don't want to be this person. I want out. I can't keep living this way. I've experienced things that I can't explain. Distorted perceptions, odd smells, strange sensations, and a constant feeling like I'm floating somewhere beyond reality. Story 12. I worked at a major donut chain in the US when I was in high school, and I had a system where I ended up pocketing a lot of extra money every night. It all started after I got in trouble for giving away day-old donuts to a local shelter. They used to come by each morning and take large bags of donuts we couldn't sell anymore. One day, my boss told me to stop due to a corporate policy change. I had to turn the shelter workers away. After that, all those unsold donuts were simply thrown out. But here's the thing. There was no tracking system in place. It could have been 5 donuts or 5 racks, and no one would know. That's partly why my plan worked. No one kept track of what was discarded. Back then, a standard dozen cost around $6.85, and 2 dozen was $11.50. Most people paid in cash, which made the math simple. Also, the drive-through camera and register were broken for 2 years. So 90% of the time, I'd open the register, make change, hand out the donuts and change, and pocket the money. Only if someone asked for a receipt would I quickly enter the transaction. The register was never off because the sale was never recorded. We weren't responsible for changes under $5 anyway, and my drawer was always balanced. There was no way for anyone to tell I was doing this because we threw away so many donuts and didn't track them. I'm sure sales dipped, but only a sharp manager would have noticed, and mine wasn't. I probably took over $100 each night I worked, and I kept it up for about 1.5 years until I left for college. Later, the store stopped operating 24 hours. During the 30 minutes after closing, while cleaning, I would sit near the drive-thru and sell dozens for $5, cash only. I could easily make an extra $20 to $50 in that short time, Customers were always happy. They got cheaper donuts, and I got cash. Also, during my last week, I took about 10 large metal baking racks we no longer used and brought them to a scrapyard. Most were broken, and I didn't really ask permission, but no one stopped me either. Not long after quitting, I did start to feel guilty about everything. I made a donation to the shelter we had stopped supporting, though not nearly as much as what I took. I try now to be a better person than I was back then. Story 13. I take my baby brother on errands just to get him out of the house. Shopping, treats, random trips. You name it. When I babysit him, he tags along even when I need to be on campus. I'm a university student. He's my best friend at this point, and we're pretty much inseparable. But eating out with a toddler means things can get a little messy. Totally understandable. He's 3 and I'm 19, so I often help him with his food if he asks. He tends to wipe his drool or boogers on my clothes, so I feel like it's fair game to use his already dirty shirt to wipe my hands when there aren't any napkins around. To be fair, it's his food that gets on my hands in the first place. We never eat inside restaurants. I usually park somewhere quiet because he gets overstimulated in loud places. He sits in the passenger seat when we eat, and if I don't feel like reaching in the back for his bag, I just use his shirt. Why have just a baby brother when you can have a baby brother and a napkin? He thinks I'm tickling him, so it's a win-win. It's kind of silly, but I love my baby brother, and the age gap makes it even funnier. I love being a big sister and taking him everywhere. I can't wait to thank him someday for being my napkin. Story 14. In high school, I lived near a beach town that held massive pride festivals every Memorial Day weekend, and thousands of LGBTQ+ people would come to party. One year during Memorial Day weekend, I was 16 and hanging out at the beach with a group of my guy friends from school. We were a bunch of scrawny, dorky, straight teenagers, like 14 to 16 years old, and we would sneak into beach hotels to hang out in the hot tubs and pools. While we were in a hotel hot tub, a guy walked up and asked if we wanted to come drink beer with him and his friends. Being 16, I was like, absolutely. So I turned to my friends and said, just follow my lead. And we went with him to his penthouse suite. He opened the door and we walked in. The room was full of about 10 older men, all in their 30s and 40s, wearing towels or swimwear and built like bodybuilders. Me and my 3 skinny friends froze completely. Everyone in the room looked at us, looked at each other, then looked back at us. One of the men asked, "How old are you guys?" I answered, 16. He followed up with, "What are you doing here?" And I just said, "Looking for some beer." He handed us a case of Coronas and said, "Get out of here." We quickly said, "Yes, sir. Have a good day." We had a very quiet elevator ride back down to the lobby. Then we went to the beach and drank the beers. I was embarrassed at the time, but honestly, it became a pretty great memory. One of my friends, who was raised in a very strict home, still pretends it never happened, but the rest of us laugh about it to this day. Story 15. I never admitted this to my parents, but when I was 15, I took a hallucinogenic substance. And that same night, my dad had a medical emergency and was taken to the ER. I was so out of it, trying my best to act normal. When the doctor came to talk to our family, I was smiling at him like he was a cartoon character, thinking to myself, look friendly, whatever that even meant. My sister, who is 8 years older, noticed immediately. She pulled me aside and was about to let me have it when a stretcher went by. A young girl had slipped while cleaning above a deep fryer at a fast food place. She fell in, and her legs had been severely burned. She wasn't screaming. She was either unconscious or had been sedated. My sister went completely quiet. I kept staring at the girl, thinking it had to be a hallucination. I genuinely believed my mind had made it up. But then I saw a piece of skin fall off and hit the floor. I heard the sound as it landed on a nurse's foot, and the nurse jumped in shock. It was, without a doubt, one of the worst things I've ever seen. To this day, I feel horrible for going to the hospital in that state. I just stared at the girl wide-eyed with no reaction because I didn't believe what I was seeing. I'm sure the doctor thought I was emotionless or cold for not reacting. But in my head, I was just thinking, don't react or they'll think you're losing it. I really wish I had just stayed home that night. Story 16. You've house sat for me before. I recognized your post immediately. The way you described organizing mail, folding towels, putting everything back exactly as you found it. It was you, no doubt in my mind. What you didn't know is that the first time you stayed in my home, I saw what you did on the puppy cam in my bedroom. I wasn't spying on you, not at first. I had just checked the app to make sure the dog was okay, and then there you were, standing in front of the mirror, wearing my dress. Not a casual one either, the one I keep hidden in the back of the closet. The one I wear when I want to feel confident and expensive. You slipped it on like you had done it 100 times. You looked at yourself, turned slowly, posed a little. Then you just wore it, walked around the room like it belonged to you. I should have felt violated. I should have changed the locks, called you out, and never invited you back. But I didn't. I watched the whole thing, every second of it, with this strange magnetic pull in my chest. And then I asked you to house sit again, and again. After that, I started leaving things where I knew you'd find them. A silk robe neatly folded on the bed, a new pair of heels left just beside the closet. I even started buying things that weren't quite my taste. Things I thought you might like. Lacy, fitted, dramatic. And sure enough, each time I checked the footage, there you were. Trying it all on. Slowly. Deliberately. Like it was part of a ritual. You were always so respectful. So precise. You'd return everything exactly how it was, as if a breeze had passed through. But I knew. I still know. And now I don't even know whose game this is anymore. Is it yours for quietly stepping into my clothes? Or mine for placing them out, knowing you'd come? Either way, I just booked another trip. The guest room is ready. Story 17. This happened back in high school. I had this friend I met in our 3rd year. He was okay, except when he was unbelievably annoying. I sat in front of him in the back row of class, and sometimes he'd randomly say, "Let's go," and smack the back of my head. I tolerated it the first few times because I didn't want to make a scene and thought he'd eventually stop. But he didn't. I told him to knock it off several times. He'd back off for a few days or a week, but then start again. We almost got into a fight over it. He also wasn't exactly top of the class. From what I remember, he either failed math or barely passed it. Same with chemistry and English. For some of the harder exams, I'd let him cheat off my paper, but I'd charge him for it. These were IB classes too. Anyway, it came time for finals, and we had a biology test. Since the previous one had been tough, they made this one a bit easier. He was just barely passing biology, so he asked if he could cheat off me again. I said, sure. Since I don't want you to fail, this one's on me. During the exam, I read each question, figured out the correct answer, and then deliberately wrote the wrong one on the answer sheet, except for a few easy ones to avoid raising suspicion. After he finished and fell asleep, which he usually did, I went back and changed my answers to the right ones. After the test, he told me he had changed one of his answers because he thought I got it wrong. Ironically, that was one of the questions I answered correctly on purpose, so he ended up getting it wrong. He failed. I didn't go to school the day the grades were handed back. When he asked me what I got, I just told him I did badly too. In reality, I scored in the 90s. He ended up with something in the 30s or 20s. He was already on thin ice with the school, constantly called into meetings, being advised to improve or leave the program. That last failure pushed him over the edge, and he quit IB in the 4th year. That also meant he wasn't in our class anymore. Finally, some peace. For anyone wondering why I didn't just switch seats, our class had a fixed seating chart. Changing it would have caused a lot of unnecessary hassle and tension with others. Story 18. So, my name is Dean, and my brother's name is Sam. We were born 13 years apart. My parents say it's because they didn't want me to be alone after they were gone, but my personal theory is that Sammy was a surprise. In the best way, love you, bro. Anyway, my name isn't from the show Supernatural. I know that for sure because I was born before it aired. It wouldn't make sense anyway, since my parents aren't really into TV shows. I once asked my dad why they chose the name Dean, and he said it sounded cool and like someone with authority. I didn't push further. I started watching Supernatural when I was around 10, just because one of the characters shared my name, which I thought was awesome. About 2 years later, my parents told me I was going to have a sibling. I was super excited. When we found out it was going to be a boy, I just knew what I had to do. So Sam was born. My parents didn't know about the show back then, but they definitely do now. Years later, they even asked me if I got the idea for the name Sam from the show. I denied it because it felt silly to admit I named my brother after a fictional character just so we could match. But yeah, I totally did that. I don't think my parents ever believed me, but they didn't ask again. I can't wait to watch Supernatural with Sam one day. I'm sure he's going to love it. Story 19. I posted about my brother, and then he disappeared. But today, he texted me. My brother Joe had been crashing on my couch after his wife, Amanda, left him. Their son Jonah said something inappropriate at school, a slur he picked up from a YouTuber Joe let him watch. Amanda had warned him before, asked him to be more careful about what Jonah was exposed to, but Joe always brushed it off. She had enough and packed up. Joe came to me like nothing had happened, still joking around, still pretending it wasn't a big deal. I didn't know how to talk to him without getting angry, so I wrote about it here, just to vent. He found the post and left that same night without saying much. That was a few days ago. This morning I got a text from him. It said, "I'm at a diner. Can we talk?" I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, I was nervous, but I went. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. Hoodie, messy hair, red eyes. We sat down and didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "I read what you wrote. All of it. I hated you for it, but I think I needed it." That hit me. I told him I wasn't trying to shame him. I just didn't know how else to say those things without it turning into a fight. I was angry, sure, but mostly I was scared. Watching him lose everything and still act like it didn't matter broke something in me. He told me he's been thinking about everything, that maybe he uses jokes and indifference because he doesn't know how to handle things when they actually do matter. He admitted Amanda was right, that Jonah deserves better, that maybe this was the wake-up call he needed. We cried quietly, sitting across from each other at a diner booth over cold coffee. He's not coming back to stay with me. He found a place he can afford for now. He said he's going to give Amanda space and start looking for a therapist. He wants to be the kind of dad Jonah can count on, the kind Amanda doesn't need to protect their son from. We're not suddenly okay. This didn't fix everything, but it was something. And after the past few days, something feels like a lot. If you've been holding back from saying something because you think it'll just blow things up, I get it. But sometimes silence does more harm, and sometimes the person you think won't hear you actually will. Story 20. It was the early 2000s, and I was 11 when my best friend invited me over for a sleepover. We were playing Halo or something similar when his mom asked him to come help her with something for a moment. After a minute or two, I got impatient and decided to check on them. I thought maybe I could help so we could get back to our game faster. I followed the sound of their voices and walked in, only to see his mom holding a nighttime undergarment and my best friend stepping into it. He looked incredibly embarrassed. His mom quickly said, "Don't mind us, we're just cleaning." But I could tell what was really going on. For some reason, maybe just to ease the awkwardness, I said, "I wear them too, but didn't bring mine." I'll never forget the look on my friend's face. It was like shock and disbelief rolled into one. His mom smiled and said, "Well, we have plenty," and held out another one. So I took off my pants and underwear, and she helped me put it on, pulling it up snugly. I had never worn one before. I didn't need to, and I didn't have any issues. But in that moment, it just felt like the only way to make the situation less uncomfortable for him. The rest of the sleepover went great, and every sleepover after that, we both put one on without saying much about it. I didn't mind. Honestly, I was just happy to be at his house. My family couldn't afford video games or much else back then, so it was a fun escape. Story 21. I had 2 little kids at the time. This was sometime in the 1980s. We were staying at my mom's house while she was at work, and of course, the kids got hungry. I checked the kitchen, and all she had were some diet shake drinks. Maybe okay for me, but definitely not something I was going to give my babies. I was 17 without a job, and my then husband, now ex, was off on one of his usual benders. I called my brother and asked him to come over and watch the kids so I could run across the street to try and get some food. When I got to the store, I panicked and blurted out, "I'm here for Mr. Cobb's order." But nobody there knew what I was talking about. I just kept going, told them my boss was going to fire me if I messed this up. "This is the last time I can afford to get it wrong," I said. They asked what was supposed to be in the order, and I listed off a bunch of items. even though I honestly don't remember what they were now. Then the manager came out, and I just started crying. I told the whole story again and made it sound like this job was all I had left. He looked at me and said, "Ma'am, it's okay. We'll take care of it." And he did. They gathered everything on the list and even added some drinks for free. I walked out of that store with enough food to feed my kids, my brother, and even my mom when she got home. She was surprised to see me there, but not really. She already knew the kind of man I was married to. To this day, I still feel bad about what I did. But my kids ate like kings that day. If I could go back to that store, I'd give them every cent and then some. They didn't have to help me, but they did. Story 22. I'm 68 now, and the story I'm sharing happened when I was 16. I've never told anyone this before. Back then, all I could think about was the idea of being with someone for the first time. I met a girl through friends. She showed me that she liked me, and I was so focused on what I wanted that I didn't stop to think about her feelings. I picked her up, took her to my room, and we were intimate. I didn't think about whether she was comfortable or if it mattered to her. To me, it was just something I wanted to experience. Afterward, I drove her near a friend's house and told her to go ask him to meet me. As soon as she was out of sight, I left. I left her to find her own way home. Why I did that, I'll never understand. But even now, all these years later, I've never forgiven myself for the way I treated her. And I don't think I ever will. Story 23. I know I give off a certain kind of impression. I'm nearly 6 feet tall, a big guy with tattoos, short hair, and a strong London accent. On the surface, I look like someone you might expect to see in the wrong kind of crowd. But here's the truth. We were just football lads. Our weekends were about the games, the pub, and having a laugh. So when one of our closest friends came out as transgender, it was a shock at first, but we had known her since we were kids. We didn't care. This was 14 years ago, when it wasn't as accepted, and she faced a lot of hate for being herself. We got to know her as Sarah. She still came to the games with us, but people were cruel. Her father never accepted her, and things got really dark. Eventually, Sarah took her own life. It's been 12 years, and I still haven't fully gotten over it. We lost someone truly good that day. I've tried to be an ally ever since. Fast forward to yesterday. I was in a public place when a trans woman came and stood near me. Closer than I was comfortable with, but that wasn't the problem. Her hygiene was. Her skin looked unhealthy, her teeth were in bad shape, and the body odor was intense. So I stepped away. She looked at me and muttered, "Bigot." That struck a nerve. My demeanor changed instantly. My partner saw it and whispered, "Don't react." But I did. I pointed out the hygiene issues and told her I moved because of that, not because of who she was. She broke down. And right then, I realized I'd gone too far. My partner later told me I handled it poorly, and she was right. I don't know what kind of discrimination that woman has faced. Maybe from people who look like me, and that's what hurts most. I could have simply said I was making space, but I chose to defend, then attack. Even if I saw her again, no apology could undo how I made her feel. I should have done better, and I'm ashamed I didn't. Story 24. Throwaway account, because no one can ever know this. I was in college, a freshman, when I came down with a nasty case of food poisoning. After hours of tossing and turning in cold sweats and stomach cramps, I finally fell asleep. Around 4 a.m., I woke up with that immediate, desperate need to go. My boyfriend was sleeping over, and since my roommate wasn't there that night, I'd gone to bed in just my underwear. I was on the wall side of those tiny twin beds, so I had to crawl over him. Before I could even grab my shirt, it was too late. I could feel everything happening and knew I had to move, fast. I bolted toward the shared public restroom down the hall and ran into the larger stall for more space. As soon as I sat down, I got sick in every way possible. I threw up all over my already soiled underwear, the floor, and myself. When it finally stopped, I sat there in shock. I was in a public bathroom, covered in everything, completely naked. I waited, listened for anyone nearby, and then ran for the showers. I cleaned myself as quickly as I could, peeked out again, and sprinted back to my room when the coast was clear. I slammed the door and turned on the light. My boyfriend woke up just in time to see me standing there, drenched and shaking. I burst into tears and explained everything. He helped me dry off, made sure I was okay, and stayed with me while I changed. I went back to the restroom to clean up. I threw my underwear in the bottom of the industrial trash can and wiped down the mess. I didn't want to leave a trace of what had happened. Afterward, we agreed I should sleep on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, just in case. That night scarred me, but somehow my boyfriend stayed kind, and I'll never forget that. Story 25. We were in Vegas. It was around 3 a.m., and we had just left the club. Our flight was scheduled for the next morning, but we were still riding the high of the night. As we walked through the hotel casino, two guys approached our group and asked if we wanted to come up to their hotel suite. The sober version of me would have said no, but the intoxicated version of me said, "Sure, let's go have fun." My 5 friends and I followed them up to their suite, and I was speechless when we walked in. It was incredible. There was a full-size dining table, a kitchen, a stocked bar, and an amazing view. There were already a few other guys there, and my friends joined them and started drinking. I took just one shot and then stepped into another room, sitting quietly with my phone and looking out at the city lights. That last drink hit me harder than I expected, so I stopped drinking completely. A tall, kind-looking guy walked in and asked why I wasn't with the others. I told him I was shy and more of an introvert. He smiled and said he was the same. What started as small talk quickly turned into a deep, honest conversation. We ended up talking for 4 hours straight. I don't know how to explain it. Something just clicked. I felt like I could be myself. We liked the same things, shared stories, laughed. He let his guard down, and so did I. I had never felt a connection like that. Eventually, it was time to go. We had a flight to catch. I knew it couldn't be more than what it was. He lived in LA and I'm from the Bay Area. Long distance just wasn't realistic. As we said goodbye, he gave me a long 5-second hug, then kissed me on the cheek. I left Vegas thinking about him. We never exchanged numbers or social media. I only knew his first name, Matt. Now, 5 years later, every time I hear summertime sadness, I think of him. My confession is that I don't think I've ever emotionally connected with anyone the way I connected with Matt. I've gone on dates and had relationships, but nothing has come close to what I felt that night. He's become this untouchable memory. I don't know what he's doing now, but I hope he's happy. Eventually, I know I'll find someone, but a part of me will always wonder what could have been. Story 26. My parents weren't exactly the most nurturing. They both worked long hours in restaurants and often spent their earnings on themselves. That meant growing up, I had very little, and I basically raised myself. During most of my teenage years, all they really gave me was a big bag of rice and a tray of eggs. That became my entire diet. I'd boil the rice and cook an egg. That was it. For years. One day, for some reason, my mom took me to the supermarket with her. It felt like such a luxury. I got to pick out a few things I had only seen on TV. I felt like a normal kid for a brief moment. One of the things I chose was a burger meal that came with a patty, bun, cheese, and ketchup. A little kit you could cook at home. It felt too special to eat right away. I wanted to save it. After about 4 days while I was at school, I decided I was finally going to cook and enjoy it. But when I got home, I found that my dad had eaten it. I cried so hard that day. That was 30 years ago. Today, I live a good life. I put myself through university working night shifts, and now I've built over $1 million in investments. Life has changed dramatically. But once in a while, I still think about that day, that feeling of loss, the hunger, the disappointment, and sometimes it still brings tears to my eyes. Every now and then in conversation, someone will say something like, "That's because you've never known what it's like to be poor," and I just stay quiet. I think about that burger that moment, but I never tell anyone this story. I don't really know why, but I carry it with me. Maybe I always will. Story 27. I was around 18 at the time, living in an apartment with a friend. We were both unemployed and completely broke. One evening, we were just hanging out, playing PlayStation and drinking a few beers. After a while, another mutual friend stopped by to join us. Hours passed, and as you might expect, we all got pretty drunk. At some point, my roommate turned to me and said he was hungry. Then he came up with this brilliant idea. One of us should sneak into our mutual friend's house, the guy who was literally hanging out with us at that moment, and see if there was any food, drinks, or anything else we could grab. Important detail, this friend lived with his dad just about 100 to 150 meters from our place. So yeah, that actually happened. I volunteered to go, while my roommate stayed back to keep our friend distracted. I don't even remember what excuse we used, if any. Out I went into the rain, completely drunk with no plan, just an IKEA bag and a goal. I decided not to try the front door, which faced the street, and went around to the back. I climbed the slick wooden steps up to the deck and tried the patio door. It was unlocked. First thing I saw, the liquor cabinet. I started loading bottles into the bag, but the clinking of all that glass was loud, way too loud. I needed to do something. I ran to the bathroom, found a towel, and carefully wrapped the bottles to muffle the noise. Problem solved. Then I went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. And wow, there was so much food. I remember seeing ribs that looked like they were freshly made, some cold beers, and for whatever reason, I grabbed frozen peas too. Apparently, drunk me likes those? I filled the bag with as much as I could carry, but I was getting nervous, so I headed back. Since our friend was still at the apartment, I stashed everything in the basement storage. He left not long after I got back. Must have been late already. Just minutes later, he started calling and texting both of us like crazy, saying there had been a break-in at his place. We didn't respond right away, and later claimed we had been too busy playing games to hear or notice anything. Then we had ourselves an amazing night and morning, ribs, quality liquor, cold beers. It was like a feast. And no, we never got caught. Somehow. So yeah, that's my confession. I don't really feel bad about the food or drinks, but being inside someone's house without their permission, that still makes me feel uneasy to this day. That's not a feeling I ever want to give someone again. Story 28. Back when Circuit City was still around and I was in college, I worked in the back stockroom. I was the guy who would bring TVs and other big-ticket items out to people's cars or retrieve high-value items that were stored in the back. This was when TVs were still massive cube-shaped monsters, not the slim models we have now. Because of their shape, the boxes had large empty spaces in the back corners. Perfect hiding spots. At first, my friends and I would swipe small things. PS2 games, CDs. Just small stuff we could easily hide under our clothes. But then we came up with a bigger plan. We had friends come in, buy TVs, and return them a day or two later. Before the return, we'd stuff those empty spaces with electronics. Some of my favorite things I got through this little operation were a high-end digital camera and a really cool portable DVD player with a 10-inch screen. At the time, it felt like we were pulling off something huge. There were 4 of us in on the plan, and none of us ever got caught. I remember during physical inventory, the store got a lot of heat because we had the highest shrinkage, missing inventory in the region. Management must have suspected something, but the back room only had one camera, and it pointed at the door leading to the main floor, not the storage area. Oh, and one more thing, I almost forgot. There was a semi-trailer permanently attached to the warehouse. That's where we dumped our compacted cardboard. One day I noticed a gap between the bay and the trailer wall. It was just wide enough for a laptop box. I slid one through and picked it up after my shift. All of this was just the kind of reckless stuff broke college kids do. I haven't stolen anything since I left that job. I don't live that kind of life now, and I never did afterward. But looking back, I can't believe we pulled that off for as long as we did. Story 29. Yeah, I know. It sounds kind of sad. That's why I'm not posting this under my main account. Today was my birthday. My boyfriend had work, which is totally fine. It's a new job, and I understand he couldn't ask for time off. He also had plans to visit his daughter, which he should. He just got visitation rights, and he's not going to let her down. Afterward, he said we'd go to McDonald's together. Nothing fancy, but I was looking forward to it. He got home and just kind of stalled for a long time, while I was already pretty hungry. I told him, okay, let's go at 7. All he had to do was walk the dog. He had 30 minutes, but then right at 7, he texted me saying he'd be late, still out with the dog. By then I was frustrated. No card, no flower, not even a small gift like chocolates. And now he was late. Again. He's often late for things, but it just stung more today. I ended up going alone. Meanwhile, he blamed me for not walking the dog myself, it's his dog, and reminded me that I had said we could celebrate another day. But all week he had been hyping up this dinner. I didn't expect much, but I did believe him when he said we'd do something nice. Earlier in the week, I told him I just wanted some quiet time to myself on my birthday. No pressure. I'm used to being alone. Honestly, I don't even know what it's like to have a birthday party, but he kept insisting on taking me out, and this is what it turned out to be. I ended up imagining a birthday party with ChatGPT. I simulated what it would feel like to have people around, to get presents, to blow out candles on a cake. It was actually kind of fun in a strange way. The kindness felt nice, even if it wasn't real. So yeah, that was my birthday. At least I got to feel a little joy, even if it came from something artificial. I guess I just needed to share it somewhere. I can't help but feel like it's my fault for expecting anything at all. Story 30. I'm a male U.S. Army veteran. I served many years ago. And recently, my younger cousin joined the military. Since then, he's been asking me a lot of questions. But there's one topic he keeps circling back to. How often you're naked during service? I told him that, aside from a few physical exams and training-related situations, you're rarely in that situation. He asked if other men look at you, and I said yes. But it's usually just a quick glance. Nothing weird or uncomfortable. I mentioned to him that during one of my physicals, the examiner was a female military doctor. He asked me if that felt awkward. I told him honestly, it didn't. In fact, I actually felt more at ease with her than I did with the male civilian doctors I'd had before. The female doctor was very respectful and professional. On the other hand, the male doctors I had felt rushed, and their tone came across as a bit judgmental. It wasn't anything explicit, it was just a vibe. I told my cousin that in my experience, when a doctor is of the opposite gender, they tend to be a little more mindful of bedside manner. Since getting out of the military, I've always requested a female doctor when possible, not because of anything inappropriate, but because I feel like they approach exams with more care. I know doctors are professionals, and I'm sure they've seen everything before. Still, as a male patient, I just feel more comfortable in those situations. I'm not sure if others feel the same, but that's been my personal experience. Story 31. A little over a month ago, I was trying to sleep but kept getting woken up by my upstairs neighbor's dog. The barking, whining, and scratching at a door had been going on for about 6 straight hours. I had to be up super early for work, and while I had heard the dog before on a few other nights, it was never this long or this relentless. For some reason that night, it just really got to me. I was exhausted, frustrated, and way too irritable to think clearly. I've never met these neighbors. I don't know what they look like, don't have their contact info, and have never spoken to them. So there's never been a conversation about the noise. By midnight, I had hit my limit. I went upstairs and knocked on their door for about 5 minutes. Nothing. No answer. Nobody seemed to be home. I went back to my apartment, wrote a note in a rush of frustration, and left it in front of their door. Looking back, I'm really embarrassed about the note. I was just reacting on pure impulse. It said something along the lines of, "Please shut your dog up. Is it okay? This has been going on for weeks and I have to work early in the morning. Sincerely, your downstairs neighbors." It was written more aggressively than that, but that was the message. Yeah, I completely outed myself by signing it from your downstairs neighbors, and I regret that now. I honestly wasn't thinking straight. I guess I just wanted them to know how fed up I was. But the truth is, I tend to lose control when I'm angry, and that's something I've struggled with. The next day, I remembered leaving the note and immediately regretted it. I went upstairs to try and retrieve it, but it was already gone. I knew then that they had read it. Eventually, I tried to just move past the whole thing and act normal. Then a few days ago, I ran into the neighbor in the stairwell while taking out the recycling. He saw me coming out of the apartment below his and asked if I had left the note. I panicked and told him I had no idea what he was talking about. I blamed it on a friend of my roommates who had been staying with us recently. He accepted that and said he had been having a rough day when he saw the note. But then he stopped mid-sentence and said, "As long as it's not you, never mind," and walked away. Now I feel even worse. I'm worried he might report it to management, but so far nothing has happened. I don't think the note could be considered threatening, but I'm concerned it might have come across that way. I've thought about going up and apologizing, but I don't know if that would make it better or just make it worse. So for now, I'm pretending it didn't happen and pushing it to the back of my mind, but the guilt still lingers. Story 32. I work a union job in industrial machine electronics maintenance. It's for a large company that employs thousands of union workers. And while no job is ever truly safe, mine is relatively secure for now. I troubleshoot and repair complex machinery and robotics, many of which have ongoing issues. There's a lot of tribal knowledge in our shop, unwritten procedures and tricks that aren't in any manual. Even the engineers aren't fully aware of some of the things we do to keep these machines running smoothly. Our facility already has plenty of automation and robotics, which have unfortunately replaced quite a few jobs over the years. About 8 months ago, a new project was introduced to upgrade a large drilling machine. The stated goal was to improve efficiency for the operators, but we all saw through it. It was clearly designed to phase out the human operators entirely. This would have impacted roughly 150 union workers across all 3 shifts, all earning between $70,000 and $120,000 annually. Naturally, the operators weren't happy, and neither were we. We weren't interested in helping the company, especially during a time of record profits, eliminate more people from the workforce. The engineers provided the equipment and walked us through how to install and calibrate it. Then they checked in daily with both us and the operators, asking for updates and requesting adjustments. But here's the thing. No one actually double-checked our work. Either they trusted us or didn't know how to verify what we were doing. All of the data and system performance was based on us properly setting things up. At the beginning, we didn't even need to interfere. The software was so buggy that the system barely functioned. But over time, we learned what metrics they were watching and what they didn't want to see. As things improved, the operators started reporting vague problems, which led to more tweaks. Many of these tweaks, while seemingly innocent, actually caused small issues that weren't immediately noticeable. We didn't raise any flags. The engineers would try another fix, and the cycle continued. Sometimes the adjustments made it worse. If they did, we'd let it run until the issues became obvious. Occasionally, the machines would jam or break down completely, which could delay the project by a week or more. If everything was running too smoothly, we, or the operators, would introduce minor concerns to make the engineers revisit the code. With our internal knowledge of how to truly keep these machines operating properly, all we had to do was not apply the usual tricks we'd normally use to keep things stable. The project lasted about 8 months. Eventually, the company announced they had blown past the budget and were shutting it down. I do feel bad for the engineers and programmers. Many of them had the talent to make this work, and they were just doing their jobs. But this upgrade would have led to the loss of 150 good-paying jobs, and it would have accelerated automation elsewhere in the company. I know this isn't over. They'll try again next year with a new budget, and we'll do what we have to do for as long as we can. We're careful because we know we could lose our jobs over this, but our repair shop is small and close-knit. For now, we've bought a little more time for ourselves and for the people who would have been replaced. Story 33. My 80-year-old mother currently has 7 adults living in her 2-bedroom house. 2 of them are staying in the garage, which doesn't have a bathroom or any real living amenities. The rest live inside the house. Out of all these adults, only the 2 living in the garage have jobs. But from what I understand, they don't contribute much to my mother's expenses, especially my niece. Inside the house, 2 adults are in very poor health. One of them receives Social Security. The other is 59, also in poor health, and has no income. She's made little effort to apply for disability and doesn't help around the house at all. She doesn't even go to the food bank to get food. My elderly mother, on a limited income herself, reportedly pays for this woman's soda and cigarettes. The other 3 adults are in their early 20s. Out of them, only one has a part-time job, working 3 days a week. That person supposedly pays $200 a month toward rent. None of the others pay anything toward the bills or household needs. To make things worse, the 2 oldest people in the home do not get along and argue frequently. Their conflicts create a lot of stress for my mother. Yesterday, she was doing her usual routine, cleaning around the house, even though she had been up for several nights taking care of her sick dog, with very little help. That morning, she said she didn't feel well and that something felt off. She asked for an ambulance to be called, which for her is a very serious step. My son and I got to the hospital first. When we arrived, she was completely incoherent and didn't even recognize me at first. We feared she had a stroke. Thankfully, over the course of the day, she improved significantly, and all her vital signs returned to normal. She was discharged that evening. Then this morning, my sister called me and said it appeared our mom had accidentally eaten an entire pot cookie. That's likely what caused her symptoms the previous day.